A new dawn or a false promise? William Ruto assumed the presidency of Kenya with promises of change. He pledged to uplift the ordinary Kenyan and champion economic empowerment. Yet, a year into his term, unease has settled over the nation. Controversial decisions have many questioning Ruto's leadership. The increasing use of force against dissenting voices has sparked protests. These incidents raise concerns about Kenya's direction under Ruto.
The decision to deploy Kenyan troops to Haiti, a nation grappling with gang violence and political instability, has been met with bewilderment and anger by many Kenyans. Critics argue that the move lacks transparency and public consultation. They question the rationale behind intervening in a distant conflict, while Kenya faces its own pressing security challenges.
The deployment has also raised concerns about the welfare of Kenyan soldiers who will be operating in a volatile and unfamiliar environment. The government argues that the deployment is a humanitarian gesture, a demonstration of Kenya's commitment to global peace and security. However, many see it as a misguided attempt to appease Western powers and secure their favor. The deployment to Haiti, they argue, comes at the expense of addressing pressing domestic issues such as poverty, unemployment, and inequality.
Ruto's decision to distance Kenya from BRICS, a bloc of emerging economies that includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has further fueled speculation about his foreign policy agenda. This move, coupled with his overtures to Western nations, suggests a pivot back towards traditional allies. While the government maintains that Kenya is pursuing an independent and non-aligned foreign policy, critics view these actions as a betrayal of the country's long-standing commitment to South-South cooperation.
They argue that aligning too closely with the West risks undermining Kenya's sovereignty and could entrench the country in a neo-colonial relationship. Furthermore, the decision to forego closer ties with China, a major investor in Kenya's infrastructure development, has raised concerns about the economic implications.
The Ruto administration's response to growing dissent has been swift and uncompromising. Protests against the Haiti deployment, the high cost of living, and perceived government overreach have been met with a heavy hand.
Police have used tear gas, water cannons, and live ammunition to disperse demonstrators, resulting in injuries and arrests. Journalists and civil society activists critical of the government have faced intimidation and harassment.
These actions, reminiscent of Kenya's authoritarian past, have cast a pall over Ruto's presidency. They have raised fears that the hard-won democratic gains made over the years are being eroded.
The government's intolerance of dissent, critics argue, is a sign of weakness and insecurity, not strength.
Ruto's trajectory shares similarities with other African leaders who, upon assuming power, promised change but resorted to authoritarian tactics to consolidate their rule. From Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe to Yoweri Museveni in Uganda, the continent has witnessed countless examples of leaders who initially enjoyed popular support but eventually succumbed to the allure of power, suppressing dissent and eroding democratic institutions. These leaders often justified their actions by claiming to act in the best interest of their nations, portraying themselves as indispensable guardians against chaos and instability. However, their actions often had the opposite effect, leading to economic decline, social unrest, and political instability. Ruto's actions, particularly his crackdown on dissent and his seemingly cozy relationship with Western powers, raise concerns that he may be following a similar path.
Kenya stands at a critical juncture. The decisions made by President Ruto in the coming months and years will have a profound impact on the country's trajectory. Will he heed the calls for dialogue and inclusivity, or will he continue down a path of authoritarianism and repression?
The international community, too, has a role to play. Foreign powers must resist the temptation to prioritize their own interests over the well-being of the Kenyan people. Instead, they should use their influence to encourage good governance, respect for human rights, and adherence to democratic principles.
The hope for a more just, equitable, and prosperous Kenya rests on the shoulders of its leaders and its people. It is a hope that must not be extinguished.